Hugh Freeze takes over an Auburn program that kind of is in a place of uncertainty. You look at what happened last year, the drama off the field and surrounding Brian Harsin kind of created some distractions for this team. And now they can try to get back to playing at a high level and competing with the best of the best in the SEC West. And Hugh Freeze brings a couple of players that we'll talk about today via the transfer portal that'll make that happen. And some of the guys they have returning are also interesting players. The 10 guys that we'll bring up, maybe not going to get them to the top of the SEC West. It's going to take time to do that, but they have potential to at least make this year a little bit better than last year. We're going to start and the offensive side of the ball fitting with Hugh Freeze coming in. Rivaldo Fairweather comes in from FIU. And honestly, FIU is kind of one of those teams. FIU, Tulsa, two teams that really don't get a ton of attention from the national media or the casual fan. But these are guys that are putting players in the transfer portal and the NFL draft consistently, and not just transfer portal to another group of five school. You're looking at guys like Fairweather, and they're sending players to Power Five programs. So obviously that program is doing something right. It's just they don't have the team success. Fairweather is a good sized player at 6'4", 251 pounds. The production maybe doesn't wow you as much, but it's because he was on an offense that wasn't exactly explosive. And he joins a passing attack that needs to take a step forward. They finished 119th in yards per game last year. So that needs to take a step forward. They need to improve in that regard if they want to get better. Another player to keep an eye on, but on the defensive side of the ball, is Marcus Harris. A pretty productive player last year, 7 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, pretty decent size at 6'3", 295 pounds. Playing in the SEC in the trenches is not easy. That is not an easy thing to do. And he did pretty well. And he's going to be paired with a transfer we'll talk about in a little bit that will make Auburn's defense a little bit more improved. You lose a little bit of talent on at the linebacker position, but this defense overall has a lot of guys who I believe will be make this group much better. One of the biggest questions for Auburn this year is the quarterback position. That shouldn't be surprising. Now, they did bring in Payton Thorne from Michigan State. I don't know if that's the most inspiring addition, but he showed that he can be a solid player. Last year wasn't the best example of that, but you look at 2 years ago, he had a pretty successful season, and they're hoping that he can get back to that. Thorne had pretty decent talent at Michigan State, and now you join a conference that is a step up in terms of competition. I don't know. Again, I don't know how well he fits in Hugh Freeze's system. I don't know how well or how inspiring the move is for this program, but I do know that he's a solid player that can at least maybe provide a higher floor than Robbie Ashford. And Robbie Ashford is extremely explosive when his game is on. It's just that his volatility is all over the place right now. 49.2 completion percentage won't win you a ton of games, if any. And that's something that he'll need to improve, obviously. But I really like the fit of him in Hugh Freeze's system. You look at what Hugh Freeze had at Liberty, especially with Malik Willis. Obviously, you want to see the passing improve. That's the only thing that's going to make this offense better. But the rushing ability is what sets him apart. I don't believe Thorne can compete with Ashford in terms of the rushing attack, but Thorne has him easily beat in terms of passing. So that's a position to keep an eye on. That is something that will be an X factor for this team. And it just comes down to a defense that was not great last year. But then you add players like Justin Rogers. To me, Justin Rogers is one of the more underrated additions via the transfer portal, and he was pretty underappreciated at Kentucky, not by that staff, but by maybe the fan base or even just the SEC in general. He is someone who is not, like, again, the defensive tackle position is almost a thankless position because you don't rack up the stats that a lot of other guys do. Justin Rogers is someone who is a run stuffer. He is a massive player at 6'3", 346 pounds, someone that's not easy to move, and that's going to help things for the rest of the defense. Going back to the secondary, this secondary has a lot of guys that could be in this top 10. So if anybody thinks that someone else should be in here, I am open to hearing it. DJ James, to me, sits in a good position, and I'm maybe kind of biased towards him because I really liked him coming out of Oregon, and he had a pretty solid year last year. So now you add a full year of experience under his belt, and they do have a couple other guys that probably deserve to be in this list. I'll admit that. DJ James to me is really fun to watch. And this secondary returns quite a bit of experience that can make life easier for this team. But again, you're competing in the SEC. That's not going to be easy, but you still at least have some talent that can put you in a good position to win football games. We talked about transfers before, and we talked about Tulsa. Dillon Wade comes in from Tulsa. They also added, and his name is escaping, but they added 2 Tulsa tackles to compete for starting spots. And Dillon Wade is going to take one of those spots. At 6'3", 307 pounds, he flew under the radar in recruiting. And after his first really full season as a starter at Tulsa last year, we got to see the ferocious approach he takes to playing football. And that's going to bode him well in the SEC. That will get him into a lot of successful positions. He'll have a ton of success if he can continue doing that and just learn how to adapt to the new level of play. Another player that fits well in this system to me is Brian Battie. You look at what he did at USF. The numbers maybe don't stand out a ton, although last year 1,100 yards on the ground, averaged 6.8 yards per carry. That was something that I anticipated. I don't think a lot of people thought that because they just saw him as a kick returner. And by the way, he's going to be an electric kick returner for Auburn as well. I'm really excited to see how they utilize him in this offense because you have another running back, that you have a couple of running backs that will be the featured backs in this system. But Brian Battie is a guy you can utilize, hopefully, in multiple different ways to create explosive plays. And the offense really hinges on the quarterback, but there are plenty of talented players that can make life easier for them. Javarius Johnson is another one of those players, 493 yards and 3 touchdowns. Maybe not the greatest stats, but when you look at the fact they only caught 26 passes, that's 19 yards per catch. He's an explosive playmaker that can make life easy for whoever wins the quarterback job. And that's something to keep an eye on. And again, the skill positions offensively appear to be fine. And Jarquez Hunter, assuming that he's on the field, is another one of those players. Now that Tank Bigsby is gone, it's anybody's job to win. And if Hunter's on the field, it's his job to take first. 668 yards and 7 touchdowns last year. As a backup so far, to have 1,200 yards for his career and 10 touchdowns is pretty good. And you're going to see a group that will, I think, take a step forward in terms of explosiveness. Hugh Freeze knows how to coach offenses, and it really comes down to how much can they improve, how well can they take steps forward on both sides of the football. And the talent that they have returning, along with the talent that they brought in via the portal, is something that this coaching staff hopes makes this team better than they were in 2022.